It's time for Humans in Tune with Darren Bergfeld on 93.9 The River.
Welcome. And yes, it is time for Humans in Tune segment. I am very excited about today. Very proud to have someone in the studio. Well, via Zoom. We're meeting via Zoom today. And in the studio today, I welcome Janine Maxwell. She is author and co-founder of Heart for Africa. She's written several books. The most recent book being Hope Lives Here. Of which, and I'll tell you how good this book is. I got my copy yesterday afternoon, and I'm halfway through this book already. So it's excellent, and we're going to talk about it today. Janine, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Thanks so much. It's great to be here.
You bet. You know, for those who aren't familiar with you, we've been talking about this a little bit during this week about, what we're going to talk about and what you've done in your life as far as bringing things together for Heart for Africa. I'd just like to kind of give everybody the little elevator pitch as to, who you are, introducing Heart for Africa and kind of that mission founding the early days of what you've done.
Sure. Well, it's interesting because this all started on September 11th and, we're coming up to that 20-year anniversary. So the timing is really perfect, I think, for this new book to come out. But Heart for Africa is a faith-based charity, and we focus in the country of Eswatini, Africa, which used to be called Swaziland. And our acronym is HOPE. We want to bring hope to the kingdom of Eswatini in the areas of hunger, orphans, poverty, and education.
Mm-hmm. And, in those four areas is not just a clever acronym, kids. Hunger, orphans, poverty, and education. You're doing work on this every day. And the work that you do now, for those who see it in its whole entity now with Project Canaan and where you're at, it is a huge undertaking, You do a lot of employing of people locally there, as well as people who have been long-term volunteers from the U.S. and everything else. The growth of the organization, you mentioned, again, this all kind of started 9/11, and here we are now nearly 20 years later, and the organization has grown. But this all started, you kind of wanted to, your heart was changed, and you wanted to do something for these children in Africa. And it sounds like an oversimplification of everything, but, you've kind of chronicled this vivid, clear picture of your work through your blog as things grew, and through the website for Heart for Africa. But it all started with just a mission to do good for these kids, to help change the world. And which is, again, an oversimplification, but you guys came with this mission. Can you speak a little bit to how you turned the key, how you decided, let's fire this off? There were several things that were kind of important that God kind of put in place to make things happen, to make the wheels turn, to be able to do things. But what do you think was the big turn moment for you?
Well, I think, a $1 million donation was certainly a big thing because we found this land in Swaziland. I'll call it Swaziland because it's easier.
Sure.
We found this piece of land. It was 2,500 acres. It was bush. There were no roads, no electricity, no water, no buildings, nothing. And it was $1 million. So really the turning point for us was when we met this man in Alpharetta, Georgia, who we'd never met before. And he starts telling us about a vision that the Lord has given him. And he's describing this land. He says, there's a dairy and there's an orphanage and we're growing food and this is the vision the Lord has given me. And so my husband says, hey, wait a second. That's the same vision we've been having, but we need $1 million. And this guy wrote a personal check for $1 million. So that was definitely a turning point.
That's incredible. Yeah. And that just shows kind of the Lord's serendipity of laying things where they need to be to happen.
And it's all his money.
It is.
All his money. Yeah.
And when you talk about, this land in Africa, guys, don't think about the Lion King. Don't be picturing in your head like, this, like if you've ever had to clear land in a backyard in Swamp East, Missouri and deal with briars and brush, that is the easy mode of clearing this land in Africa.
We got snakes, man. We got snakes.
Deadly snakes, deadlier than anything we're running against. And of course, amidst all that, just the essentials of getting the materials you need. And I think one of the most beautiful things about Project Canaan is how much of it you've been able to make self-sufficient in order to provide for the people that are working there, the kids that are there in school and all of your staff and all of your volunteers. The self-sufficiency is amazing, but all that comes together because of all the people that help to make it happen, right?
That's right. And we have a dairy. So we actually do have our own cows. So, I should go back and tell you that my husband and I are parents to 295 Swazi children.
Yeah.
And eldest is 10 years old, a set of twins, and the youngest is about 5 days old. So when you talk about sustainability, it's not just being able to provide employment for more than 300 people, but we have a lot of mouths to literally feed.
Absolutely.
So that's where the dairy comes in. And we have 5,000 laying hens as well.
Yeah, and that's incredible. And in the book, you speak to some of the logistics of the side of the farm as to, not only are you able to provide for the babies that are there and the children that are there and the staff that are there, but you're able to sell that out to help sustain the farm financially as well, throughout the community, throughout the nation, really, as far as exporting those things. Now, again, the farm itself is a huge undertaking of work, but the kids, you mentioned 297 babies, and a lot of this, we could go way into the weeds and talk about the kids all day, but a lot of that is what drew me to Heart for Africa initially, was just the sheer effort of you saving lives, literally saving lives, babies who are found in dire situations, left on the side of the road in a bag or dumped in a pit latrine. And these are literal, real circumstances that are happening in Eswatini and Swaziland. And you were able to, and it is a sad situation. Not every baby is able to be saved, but you have, through Heart for Africa and through Project Canaan, been able to save so many lives and I realistically give Eswatini a future, right, through these kids you're raising.
And a lot of that's been through people from Cape Girardeau and Missouri. I mean, I went to school at Evangel in Springfield. And so, love our friends from Missouri, but it takes a village to raise a child. And it certainly takes a very large village to raise 295 there, plus our biological children, which, we don't accept donations from them, but,
Right. Well, yeah. And that says it. It takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a city to raise a village. And you've really created that over there. And again, you mentioned Cape, the support here, and that was kind of my early involvement, was to getting to know those supporters and how, somebody who could feel a call in their heart to say, you know what, I'm going to go over there. Kenny and Amber Van Winkle were church mates of mine, and they made the decision to come be a long-term volunteer.
They live there.
And they live there
for 8 years.
Yeah. And Kenny, and for those who don't know him, Kenny's a big old dude like me, and he's tatted up, and he's, he looks hardcore, but he's got a big old bear heart, but he's over there, killing deadly snakes and playing with toddlers and living the life. And they have such a wonderful existence. But they're creating the future.
That's right. They're serving the Lord, and Amber's our head teacher, and Kenny's in there right there with her, doing Bible class. And they're just an absolutely amazing couple. And I know a lot of people in Cape support them, and we thank them for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it is an ongoing mission and a growing mission and a successful mission. I mean, you definitely have your downsides, the things you have to deal with. And you address a lot of that in the book, as well, as far as, betrayals that you've had to deal with and sadnesses and losses. Drought. Do we need to talk about drought? It decimated, Swaziland and left you guys with, empty reservoirs and at a point where, can you continue? Yet God provides, right?
You can't live without water. Water is, and we've had people say to us, from the West or from America, say, well, just go to town and buy water. And we had a couple hundred kids at the time, and you can't buy bottled water just to bathe. And we got to a place where we were literally, your listeners probably don't need to hear this, but we were showering every second day because there was a water shortage.
That's all right. We got listeners that only shower every 3 or 4 days, so we're okay there.
Well, we'll have to check with Kenny on his situation, but yeah. We'll ask when I get back.
But when you're talking,
water's life. Water's life.
Yeah, and when you've got hundreds of babies and clothes to wash and diapers to wash and things to keep clean, to keep the place sanitary, it takes a lot of water and a lot of work. And
we change 500 diapers every single day, and we've also had people say, "Well, why don't you use ones that you wash?" And I'm like, "No, you don't want to be washing cooties out of diapers and hoping to not spread to the next kid." And we don't have water, so disposables actually ended up being a much better solution for us. But that's a lot of diapers every day.
So you fought drought, you've had to fight political unrest, and of course just the things that come with the everyday life that you've got to deal with over there. I mean, what is it that allows you to be able to overcome these adversities, to be able to continue this mission? I'm sure you have been tried and you felt it on your heart, like, I just got to stop. I'm going to explode. What keeps you driving?
Well, it's really, Ian and I have an expression that you just have to get up in the morning to make a difference in Swaziland. And that's really, in other countries in Africa that we've served. And I never felt that when I lived in the U.S. or in Canada, that if I got out of bed, I could really make a difference in people's lives. But there, I just need to get out of bed, answer my phone, and I can go and pick up a baby who's been dumped in an outhouse or a pit latrine. They've been left on the side of the road. I mean, I can literally save a life just by getting in my car and driving.
Yeah.
And so, and of course, my faith, without Jesus, I couldn't do it. And you wouldn't want to do it.
Yeah.
It'd be too hard.
Yeah. No one could carry this alone. And not even a superhero like Janine, boys and girls. And And that's why, you've got your partner in crime, Ian, to help make everything happen. But you have such a wonderful staff. I've been fortunate to meet some of them, get to know them. Truly people who are working with some of the biggest hearts in the world, doing this work day in, day out.
For sure. Yeah. Got to have a big heart, and it has to be bottomless, because, you can't just, when we are betrayed or when we get hurt or when someone steals or something, you can't say, oh, well, they're going to steal from me. We're living in a country that has abject poverty. Mm-hmm. There's going to be that.
And that's a big perspective thing, I think, for a lot of folks. And I would encourage you, before you even get into the book, to head to the website, heartforafrica.org. Read up on the website, find them on social media as well. But, when we're talking about abject poverty, we're not talking about, when we think of poverty, most of us think about, man, I'm homeless, or, my electricity's been shut off, or we're talking about folks who don't have other than dirt to sleep on, or, they're at the brink of starvation, near death.
Their houses are made of mud and sticks that are put together, and then there's grass on the top, and they sleep on mud, and that's the normal Swazi homestead. And they haven't had food. I mean, it's a real problem to get food in the country right now. Mm-hmm. Any kind of food, not just like they have no refrigerator. It's not like their refrigerator is empty, their cupboards are empty. There's no fridge.
Yeah. And, me as a farmer by heart, and us as an agriculture community, we think of, hey, we farm to table as much as we can. And I think that's why what you've done with Project Keenan and the ability to sustain there is so important, because you're able to, continue to provide through and overcome just one part of the HOPE acronym there, but, getting them fed, getting them hungry, getting the hungry kids fed and the families fed, and taking care of people.
Yeah. If you can't eat and if you don't have water to drink, nobody wants to hear about Jesus. Nobody wants to hear about anything else. And kids can't get educated. Look at all the money that's spent in the U.S. on, breakfast programs. Yeah. And if you're not well fed, if you don't have a balance, some sort of balance in your diet, you can't learn.
Yep. Absolutely. It's Janine Maxwell. She is the author of Hope Lives Here. It's a fantastic new book. I encourage you to go to heartforafrica.org and learn more about it. We're going to talk a little bit more later, because in addition to just helping the kids and working on poverty and more, they're empowering people there, locally, to be able to change their lives and change their country for good. So doing some wonderful work. Janine, we're going to come back and talk a little bit later. If you're heading to the Facebook, join us on Facebook Live. We continue the conversation over there at facebook.com/939river. And you can tune in with us there. We're going to keep the music rolling. Got some Queen coming up, because Janine, you're a Queen fan, I understand. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, we have to give a little bit of Queen. So a little bit of Somebody to Love on 93.9 The River. More of the greatest hits of all time. And we'll be back with Janine Maxwell in just a little bit on The River.
Awesome.
All right.
I thought it was interesting. I've always been a Queen fan since I was a kid, and Freddie Mercury was my idol. And then to learn, as an adult, that he was one of the very early people to die of AIDS. Uh-huh. And we didn't know that really until the movie came out, Bohemian Rhapsody, that we sort of alluded to it.
Right.
And, and that's such a big part of my world now in Africa is the HIV/AIDS pandemic. And we still have the highest HIV rate in the world in our tiny little country.
And that's hard for me to fathom, because you think of geographically how small it is. And yet, because of the way things are, just traditions and political setup and hierarchies of men over women and everything else, of how just drastic it is.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not, it's not men with men. It's young girls being, abused. It's polygamy. It's, a man has 6 or 8 mm-hmm. wives, and he's spreading it through them. So it's a different situation there than it is in North America.
Yeah. And I think some of it too is, in the early days of AIDS, Freddie Mercury, the insinuation was, well, he's a homosexual. That's God's punishment. He's given him AIDS. And that's obviously not the case. And when I think about it with Swaziland, the first thing that comes to mind to me is about the young ladies who are raped, are the polygamy and everything else that goes on, and how rampant that is. And in the book, you go into some detail about, like the guys that would leave and go work in the mine for 11 months and leave a family behind that's just, the mom's sick and then she dies. And, you have a term for the orphans, and I kind of half smile a little bit, because our NCAA conference here is the Ohio Valley Conference, which is the OVC. So when I saw the acronym OVC in your book, I was like, Yes. So if I mention OVC, SEMO fans or Ohio Valley Conference fans, we're not talking sports now. We're talking about OVC and it's, what's OVC?
Orphans and vulnerable children.
And vulnerable children. Thank you.
And more than half of our total population in the country are orphan and vulnerable children.
Yeah. And let that ruminate for just a second. Half of the country's population.
Yeah.
Okay.
Orphan, vulnerable children.
Yeah.
And we have maybe more than 15,000 orphan-headed households. There's another one that you don't use here, OHH. An orphan-headed household is a homestead that is, the oldest person is under 18 years old, and they're raising their younger brothers and sisters because the parents have died or run away or whatever it is.
Yeah. And, and this is...
Yeah, and 15,000 of those. It's unfathomable.
That's what it comes down to. And you almost feel sick. You almost feel guilty for thinking of it as that way. It's like, how dare I, put a massive number on this kind of human life and this kind of tragedy for human life. But that's what it is. That's the statistics of it. X thousand people died on September 11th in the attacks. We have a statistical number. Each of those is a human life. We have monuments with their names engraved on them. We have all these things. And then over in Swaziland, maybe 6 months later, they found the bones. There's no memorial for all of these lives that are lost.
We found Jeremy. I don't know if I should tell the story, but since we're on Facebook Live, I'm going to. There was a child that was placed with us through social welfare a couple of years ago, and the mother was being arrested because when they went to find, someone had told them the story that she used to have another child, but the child had disappeared.
Was this the 4-year-old?
This is this one isn't in my book.
Okay.
I didn't want to tell because I felt it was a little bit sensitive to put in writing. But they ended up finding the baby. Oh, maybe I did write. Last year. But they found the sibling in the pit latrine. And they found the bones and they brought the bones up, and that was why.
That's what I was alluding to, yeah, because I think that might have been the last chapter I read there.
And it's just that no one even knew. No one knew that the little girl was missing. No one knew, until a year or two later they reported it, and then they find the bone.
Mm-hmm.
Heartbreaking.
Something else is birth certificates.
Yeah.
A lot of people, and here's my white guy from Missouri thing. Well, why aren't y'all helping kids here? And that you'll hear that argument. Here's the thing: is that we have programs in our schools. My kids go to school with kids. 80% of the kids in my kids' grade school were on, state assistance for nutrition services. We have great programs in the States. East Swatini is not without programs socially. However, if you don't have a birth certificate, you have no state, you have no existence according to the country, right? So
you can't go to school. If you don't have a birth certificate, you can't go to school. And if you don't go to school, you don't get fed because of those high numbers that we've just been talking about. Most of the children of the country only get fed when they go to school, and they only get fed Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday because international aid has sent food to the country to be able to feed those children. And they send them out on Fridays at noontime so they can stretch the food. Mm-hmm. But COVID-19, it's still a thing. And in Eswatini, we're just hitting our third wave, and our schools have been closed since March 2020 because of COVID-19. And so all of those children, forget the education side and all the things that have been lost there and what's happening at home, but you also have a bunch of kids who haven't been eating at their usual school feeding program for more than a year.
Mm-hmm. And these are the ones that are fortunate enough to have it.
Right. Those are the ones who go to school in the first place.
Right. And, something else you touch on is there's requirements for school. They've, school uniform requirements, things like that have to be done too. And it's cultural, right? A lot of that is cultural. And a majority of the kids, they're lucky to have a shoe, to have new shoes for school and things. It's impossible.
Yeah, we have a 70% unemployment rate. So when you think about that, back in the Great Depression in the U.S., it was maybe 24%. And it was critical. We're at 70%, so parents just don't have jobs. And that's why at Project Canyon it's so important that we employ so many people, because those 320 people who are working can actually pay the school fees. They can buy those black shoes that the kids need and make sure that their children are being fed and in school. It's a big deal.
Yeah, absolutely. Education is incredibly important. you guys, again, can you ever cheers to you guys? Maybe they'll watch this later. I don't know. But anyway, I hope so too. Michigan.
They will. They will.
Yeah.
I know they will. They might be watching now.
Yeah, who knows? If they are, they haven't commented, but cheers to Chloe for tagging them anyway. But, beyond the kids, of course, you're also educating the community. I mean, you've got, a lot of adults who can't read, can't write. We talked about food programs and so forth. You've partnered with Feed My Starving Children. And I think you said 30 something partner churches that you're doing distribution.
Most rural communities, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And those,
we feed 4,500 kids every single week in those rural communities.
Yeah. And that's huge. I mean, those meal packs are built to get them the proteins they need. You're making you're able to make an impact, make an actual difference. But one of the logistics that you run into is your distribution system. A lot of those folks can't read, can't write. So it's hard for you to track, and get an ROI in the marketing world, a return on the investment of, how many kids are being affected? How well are they doing? Are they healthier? Are they better because of what we're doing, or are things not going the right way? So how do you manage something like that? I mean, that would be like if I trained all my cats to go check my mail and wash my car or something, and get out there and do it.
Might work better. But what we did is last year, actually, the beginning of 2020, in January, long before we knew about this global pandemic, we had a team of people who went out and did well child checks at all the church partners, because we've been feeding these children for 10 years. So, some of the children who were 10 should be 20, and they should be technically out of the program. But we thought, let's go out and actually do height, weight, head circumference, and kind of see where we are from a stunting perspective, and how, because even if the children have food, they can also still be very small.
Sure.
I'll tell you, I was really disappointed. We were all really disappointed at the level of malnutrition and starvation that we were finding in our churches. But a lot of the churches only feed on Sundays, or they might just feed Friday, Saturday, Sunday, because they know the kids are being fed at school. So we implemented at the beginning of last year, we initiated our hunger initiative, which was to start feeding those kids 7 days a week. And then boom, the pandemic hits, schools are closed. So even though the Lord told us in advance, we didn't know why, but all of a sudden starting to raise money and trying to find more food, which was difficult because Feed My Starving Children had to cut back because of their volunteer shortage. But we're now feeding 7 days a week in most of our 30 churches. And not only that, but we're up to from 3,500 to 4,500 just in the last year. And that's every single week.
Mm-hmm. And again, I think, being able to take control of that and having some level of ownership of that, and, being able to follow up and make sure that things are done the right way. And you've been able to improve on that program and expand it.
We're trying. It is like, pushing water uphill, but we know the kids are being fed. We do random checks as well. Mm-hmm. And, we've been in partnership with these pastors for a long time. So they see the value. And they know that they've been saving lives because they've been cooking these meals for them. We deliver the dry food packs, and they have to do the work of cooking them. So they're doing a great job.
And they see it from every bit of the aspect of the process, from you guys all the way through. They get to see, the happy faces that are fed faces and so forth. It's a wonderful thing.
And some of those pastors will be watching this. Even if they're not watching it live, they are on Facebook. So I know some of them will be watching this, which will be really encouraging for them. Yeah.
And from, hi, weird third-party guy from the U.S. You guys are doing an awesome job. Please don't stop. And of course, the inevitable question is, COVID's affected everything. Hi, we're here. I learned how to DJ from the house, pants optional. The world changed for us over here. But, how has that affected Heart for Africa? How has that affected Project Canaan?
Well, Project Canaan on the ground, we've had, the country is actually very strict laws, mask mandates for the last 18 months. The borders were closed for 8 months, so no one could go to South Africa. We couldn't leave for break. Kenny and Amber, our other volunteers, were really stuck on the mountain. And it became very oppressive after a while, not being able to get out to get some mental health stuff. So,
Sure.
I've been in the U.S. for about a month, and I've been talking a lot about mental health. But, a lot of people are dying. Right now, the hospitals, we're in our third wave, and the hospitals are overflowing again. We had one of the hospitals nearby us had 108 people admitted to their ICU in one day 2 weeks ago. A lot of deaths. We lost our prime minister, died in December, lost 2 members of parliament. So it's hard because the hospitals don't have medication. The hospitals don't have oxygen. We don't have any of the the things that are saving lives here in the U.S. So a lot of people, I told my husband today that 15 people died yesterday, and he said, but that's the recorded deaths. How many people are dying at home in their mud hut because they just can't get to a hospital?
Yeah.
Well, it's hard, and schools are still closed, and the country's just broken and brokenhearted.
I think, and I think that's a way to look at it, is as it being broken, because when you get to a point, you don't want to call it hopelessness, but when you get to a point where you're like, we just have to park people until they die, right, at the hospitals, that is
leave them at home because you can't get them. You can't get in a vehicle to get them to the hospital. So you just put them in another one of the empty huts where other people have died, and they just die there, and then you just bury them. And there's no statistic that records that.
No, that's just reality.
We in the country, the adults know, or the people who are trying to help know, because there's all of a sudden 8 more children who show up at a church because there's no parent. And then you go, oh, well, where is your parent? Or where's the grandmother who was caring for you? Oh, well, she died. And then the statistic really shows up because it's an orphan statistic, not a COVID death statistic.
One of the things, as I read through the book, that kind of snared my mind, and we think about, before we went on, we were talking about my daughter turns 13 tomorrow. My son just turned 10 this year. And of course, the earliest kids are hitting that same stage. And we're talking about, we're getting ready. You guys will be gearing up for your first high school graduation in 2029. And those are all positive things we're thinking about as we move, as you move forward, with what's going on with the students and so forth. But, when it comes to, that educational process, we age up. Everybody's getting a little bit older. So a lot of your early volunteers, and the go-go's, I believe is what the grandmas are called. You talked about how a lot of those in the community, as the AIDS took out more or less, I guess, my generation and that age group of people, as more and more of them have died from the AIDS epidemics and so forth, and more orphans have been created. It always fell on the grandmas to take care of these kids, but that generation isn't there so much anymore.
That's right.
And, and that's creating a whole new problem in and of itself. So, well, I think it was something like, it's a little threadbare, because that tapestry that has always been there to, safety net, take care of the kids, the orphans. There's just not as many threads in the blanket anymore.
Yeah, it's like the mosaic, the grandmothers particularly, but the grandparents were the mosaic that was holding the society together, holding the culture together, and they're just disappearing. And unfortunately, we've had a lot of civil unrest lately, and it was predicted 10 years ago. We were sitting in the office of a very high-ranking official in the government, and he said to us, Ian and Janine, my greatest fear is that in 10 years from now, the children who are orphaned now will be 10 years older. They'll be young, late teenagers, young adults, and they're going to be uneducated. They're going to be poor. They're going to be hungry, and they're going to be angry. And he said, that is my greatest fear. And that's really what the country is facing right now. Aside from global pandemic and TB and HIV, we now have civil unrest with a group of young people who are angry and hungry. And,
really probably have zero sense of nationalism, because their country has done nothing to give them a reason to care about it,
And they may not have birth certificates. They may not be able to get a passport. They may not be able to leave and maybe try to find something somewhere else.
Yeah, very true.
It's heartbreaking, and it is hopelessness. That is what we see when I look into the eyes of so many Swazis. I didn't know what hopelessness looked like, but I do now. I know exactly what it looks like from the eyes of a Swazi.
And it's hard for, what do you do at that point other than, pray with them, try to give them any kind of semblance of hope? Is just really the work you're doing. I guess you can hope that they see there's hope for the future because of what you're doing with these young kids now.
Or for them, at least you can give them a hug, you can give them a meal pack, you can give them some manna pack from Feed My Starving Children. You can just a word of encouragement, because I can't say everything's going to be okay, just hang in there, because that's not likely true.
Yeah.
But just know that, I love you, Jesus loves you, we care about you, we're praying for you. And prayer means a lot to Swazis, because they do believe in the power of prayer. Because they don't have the hospital to trust in. If they have cancer, they can't wait to look for the best cancer doctor. They have to look to Jesus.
I have to take the weather break for just a second, and we'll be right back. We're not going to go right back on air, but we'll continue our Facebook convo. Oh, it's a warm one in the heartland, kids. High of about 92 today. Heat index getting up to about 100. So be careful out there. Drink lots of water. Stay hydrated, please. Tonight, a low of about 72 overnight. And then tomorrow, sunny skies. Slight chance of showers in the afternoon. High tomorrow of about 90. We'll be back with Janine Maxwell in just a little bit more for another Humans in Tune segment. Right now, we're going to give you some Phil Collins. Phil Collins, you say? Yes.
Phil Collins.
Yeah, he's not a bad guy. Pretty decent drummer.
Who doesn't love Phil Collins?
Guys from South Park, I don't think they liked Phil Collins at all. I don't know. They had it out for him in the early days.
Oh, well, what do they know?
Well, and again, the hopelessness is where we kind of left that conversation. Nice segue, Darren. And then we talked about our cruddy weather in southeast Missouri. But we don't want to
be hopeless about weather.
Yeah. And weather, we hate swamp east Missouri. We hate our summers. Gross. It's humid. It's gross, nasty, whatever. Heat index about 108 yesterday. Blech.
That's nothing.
But we don't have the droughts and we don't have those things. So we're thankful for that. But I didn't want to leave that chunk just hanging on hopelessness, because hope is kind of the whole gist of everything you're doing. It's on the title of the book for a reason, kids. It's on her shirt for a reason, kids.
Hope lives here.
Hope lives here. And I think that obviously the title epitomizes Project Canaan. The title epitomizes Heart for Africa's mission, because that is what it is. Whether it's a baby that was found in a pit latrine, or whether it's a woman who, you were able to bring into the fold, so to speak, and educate and give her a sense of purpose. The gender equality is insane. It's to talk about it is frustrating enough, but it's terrible, because and what it causes is this disparaging situation, and women are just essentially trashed for whatever the man wants.
Women are property there.
Yeah.
But they can't own property. They can't own a piece of land,
right,
which is very, very heartbreaking. So if you're in an abusive situation, you can't go and try to get your own piece of land.
Yeah.
And in 2019, we got our first domestic violence law passed. So that's a good sign.
That's a huge step.
But it's 2019.
Yeah.
Up until then, it was okay to beat or rape your wife.
Yeah. And some of the things that, husband dies. Guess what? This guy, his brother wants to move in, kick the family off the land. It's my place. Sorry. You're out. And
then where does she go?
And that's just accepted.
Yeah. And she probably can't work because there's no work. And where's she going to live? And then what she ends up doing is finding a man who will have sex with her and take her in. But her children aren't allowed to go to his place. So then the children become homeless. And it's just a vicious, vicious circle that, I just, so there's days that I just go in, sit in my room and cry, and then, turn on some sort of crazy junk TV to pull my mind out of it. And then you wake up the next day, I read my Bible, I do my devotion. They're like, okay, game on. We can do this. And some days are a lot harder than others, though.
Oh, for sure. But again, you're not doing it alone,
No.
And that's the power of your faith, and that's the power of your team, to be able to get you through those dark patches. And golly, I rarely will say I don't want to think about it. I don't want to think about some of the dark spots you've been in, and I've read your stories, and I know some of the terrible things that you've just had to experience in what you've done and in your work, and to be able to not shake that off, but be able to take that, absorb that, learn from that, and create hope, create opportunity from that. That's just awesome, and I applaud you for that immensely.
Thank you.
I don't know if I'm that strong. You know what I mean? Like when people look at testing themselves, that's an incredible test. I got to be honest. I would probably, I've pictured myself in like a special ops position for you guys because I don't think my dad anger could handle it. I don't know. He would have to tie me down. I would be down chasing guys and doing that.
Well, I have a young girl who's living on the farm right now who will probably hear this recording, and she was being raped by her biological father for 5 years. He gave her HIV, and then she ended up getting pregnant, and we helped her. Just this year, she had a baby, and the baby's come to us. But we've been able to help her as well and get her physically healed, emotionally healed, spiritually healed, and now she's a rock star. And
that's awesome.
It doesn't always end up in a happy way that way, but she's just absolutely spectacular. We're just so very proud of her, and you know who you are.
That's right. And it's so important to celebrate those joys. I mean, every single one of those victories is an absolute reason to have a big party. Because that's what your goal is. That's your goal, is those victories, those hope, those magical moments.
Yeah.
We'll jump back on the air here in about 5 minutes ish. Well, no, we're going to do it in about a minute and a half, because if I wait that long, we're going to go past the top of the hour. So, here in about a minute 20. And what I want to talk a little bit about the opportunities you provided, like through the Kutsila artisans and so forth. I'd like to touch a little bit on that, because I think that accentuates the hope beyond saving these kids and raising up ideally a new generation that will be able to seed into Swaziland and into Eswatini and turn the country around, hopefully.
And lots of people in Cape have our ornaments.
They do. I do. I was going to bring them with me today, and I left it sitting on my bookshelf when I left the house. Felt like such a dirk. I was like, man, had it sitting right there. I was going to be all cool and be like, I got my OG angel ornament, suckers. What do you think? Yeah. But I forgot.
This year we have a dove. Peace, unity. Just thought that would be the right angle for 2021.
Nice. Yeah. Oh God, we need it. We most definitely need it. All right. Well, about 30 seconds. And while you're joining me here on Facebook, of course, please go, heartforafrica.org, go read about it. But I want you to go and read more about Hope Lives Here, guys, because, and you can borrow my copy of this book if you donate to Heart for Africa first.
Nice.
Or get your own copy, but it's,
follow me on Facebook. We do lots of social media.
Yep. All right. Let's get a little Humans in Tune back on.
It's time for Humans in Tune with Darren Bergfeld on 93.9 The River.
And we are back for segment 2 of Humans in Tune. Janine Maxwell is my guest today. Janine is co-founder of Heart for Africa. We've been talking on our Facebook Live as well. You can join us over there if you got any comments that you want to share. But we're talking about the new book, Hope Lives Here, where we're talking about Project Canaan, the wonderful work that you're doing through Heart for Africa, that your people are doing to educate and to follow the acronym of HOPE that you created: hunger, orphans, poverty, and education. And that's the title of the book, Hope Lives Here. And one of the things that you're doing with people in Swaziland is you're empowering them by educating them, by employing them as well. And an early start to this was the beaded Christmas ornaments. And I kind of came into these about the time you guys started doing them. And I was like, this is such a cool thing. Look, I got this cool handmade beaded ornament and deal. But it's more than just, here's a cool trinket that helps raise some money. If you want to speak a little bit to that piece of things.
Sure. We call it Kutsala Artisan. So Kutsala is Khutsala, and it means hardworking in Siswati. And we make beautiful handcrafted bead craft. The Christmas ornament is what we're most proud of and we sell the most of. And I know lots of our Christmas ornaments are hang on the trees in Cape Girardeau and our friends there. This year's ornament we're going to be releasing in about a week's time, but I'm going to tell your people first. It is a dove, and it is spectacular. It's 3-dimensional. And I just think we all really need peace and unity this year. So that's why we thought the dove was the right answer. And so people can go to Kutsala.com and shop Christmas gifts. We have beautiful woodcraft, lots and lots of things they can purchase there.
That's awesome. And yeah, you'll be able to find that link. I'll throw that up on our website at 939river.com a little bit later, and you can find it there. And you guys have made a lot of cool ornaments. I believe you did a full nativity set, right? At one point?
The nativity set, we've got Noah's Ark. We have charcuterie boards. We know those are really popular right now. So we actually have bloodwood trees from our farm that we cut down. We make them ourselves, and we plant more trees so that we're being responsible for the future. But lots and lots of really cool artisans work.
That's awesome. And yeah, and all of that again, your women are empowered to do this, to create this, to feel a sense of purpose within the community besides just, helping with the kids or whatever may be going on. It gives them a mission to know that what they're doing, their work that they're doing is going to help sustain that hope moving forward as well. And
it feeds their kids, and then 100% of the profit comes back to care for our orphans.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a win-win.
Yep. 100%. And you're also educating, you're teaching carpentry skills, you're teaching mechanic skills, things like that, the men of the community and the women of the community can learn these skills and be able to take them, outside of the gates to hopefully help themselves and their families.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Before Hope Lives Here, you did a couple other books. It's Not Okay With Me and Is It Okay With You? And those books, again, we could talk for hours about the books. I encourage you to go read those, but this new book, in a way is almost a primer to here's how we started. Here's how we've grown. Here's where we are. And here is the core of our mission, where we're moving forward, and why hope lives here and why that will continue to be. It's not like, hey, do you want to go start a mission in Africa? Here's your how-to book, like by Janine, step 1, buy some friends. Step 2, find a guy with $1 million check. Step 3, consider it twice.
Go home.
But it does paint a picture of the amount of effort, the amount of strength of heart and strength of faith and strength of spirit that it takes to do something like this, and really just shows that there's so much that comes together to make it as successful as it is. And when you look at the grand scheme of the effect you're making, it is a drop in the bucket. There's still so much more work to be done, just in that tiny little country.
Yeah.
But you're doing the wonderful work every day. I guess the heart and soul of Heart for Africa is hope, right? That's kind of the base on everything.
It is. And building a generation of children who will be the future of the nation and perhaps the whole continent. We're changing a nation.
That's it. It's absolutely it. And, without sounding cheesy, it's really, you think of it as, hey, you want to empower your children to go out there and be the new leaders of the new society. And if you're sincere about that, you're going to pour into them. And that's what Janine and Ian and Amber and Kenny and all these wonderful people that work at Project Canaan are doing every day. They're pouring themselves in because they want, and they didn't even grow up in the country. How about that? They want that country, that continent, to be as beautiful as it possibly can, to be full of people with opportunities across the plane of existence. It's going to be, it's going to take years. But it's been years, and look at how much you've done. It's just awesome.
Our kids, the kids growing up in Cape Girardeau, the kids growing up, nowadays in America and in Canada and around the world are going to be adults when our children are adults.
Mm-hmm.
This is a global playing field. And if we still have problems in Eswatini, those problems are American problems. So this is a great way to start young, start early, but it definitely is a long game. It's a long investment. This isn't over tomorrow.
Absolutely. Yeah, it is not over tomorrow. And yeah, if you're interested in knowing more, if you're interested in helping out, heartforafrica.org is the website. Where can they go to get the book today, Janine?
They can go to kutsala.com or they can order it on Amazon.
Okay.
Amazon is a little bit delayed in delivering, as everything else in the world right now is being delayed. But they'll be shipping, I think, September 9th, so they can pre-order on Amazon or get it through our Kutsala or Heart for Africa webpage. And Darren, I want to let you know that Kenny and Amber are listening live from Eswatini, Africa. I just got a message from them.
Awesome.
Listening to you.
That is fantastic. Hi, guys. We miss you. I'll go out and have a cheeseburger later, and thank you guys. Jeannie, I appreciate you so much taking this time with me today here on air. River listeners, again, we'll be wrapping up our Facebook Live here shortly. You can catch it. If you missed the first segment, it'll be on our podcast later today, and you can find all the details at 939river.com. Janine Maxwell, co-founder of Heart for Africa, author of Hope Lives Here. Janine, thank you so much.
Thank you so much. We love you, Cape Girardeau.
And Cape Girardeau loves you, too. We're going to spin some more tunes. We got to pay a couple of bills. We'll be right back. And the Totally 90s lunch is just around the corner. Stick around. It's 93.9 The River. Okay.
Totally 90s lunch. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's my fun noon to one time. And today, Fridays is the Blue Plate special. Today is love songs. So we're going for the awkward slow dances and the terrible mixtapes I created in high school. That's my angle today.
Really glad that I'm past that stage of life.
I have a photo from my senior year of my girlfriend and I at the time that I'm debating putting on Facebook just to throw out for the love songs today. But she and I did not get married. We're still friends, though. She probably wouldn't appreciate it. That's all right.
Yeah, probably not. Maybe your wife wouldn't either. Who knows?
No. If my wife Carrie can tolerate everything up to this point, we're in good shape.
Oh, that's true.
That's it.
True.
But
we all need someone who tolerates us. That's
it. Thank you so much for sending me the book. Like I said, I'm gonna finish this weekend. I'm halfway there, kids, and I'm gonna make sure you guys are reading this too. I'm gonna send you Hope Lives Here t-shirt as well. That's awesome. I appreciate it, and I will wear it. I'll wear it on the next Facebook Live, and we'll show it off. That's fantastic. Nice. I appreciate that. Janine, thanks so much for your time today. Thank you. I sincerely appreciate it. On Monday, so the last couple of days had McDonald's for breakfast. Those last couple of hits of get food. That little bit of American in you. A little bit of American food, and I'll have one for you too, Kenny. No doubt. All right, folks. Well, thanks for joining Janine and I on our Facebook Live here on 93.9 The River. You will be able to watch this again. It will stay evergreen on our Facebook page at facebook.com/939river. And we'll do another Humans and Tunes segment very soon, so stick around for that, Facebook friends. Have a fantastic Friday, and we will see you soon.